Greetings, friends. Greetings, everybody. Um, so this is Nello the Seeker, and I'm just going to share some thoughts with you, some things that have been on my mind recently. So it has to. I was just thinking about. There was one guy I used to follow back in the days. Someone I would call a mentor for some part of my life. He really did teach me a lot of things, like about life and things. So he had this saying that he would always say that um, every man-made thing, everything that we see around, is like a copy from nature. People just maybe found a way to do it faster, but you look at natural things and you understand more everything else that has been made. People have always been socializing, and then out of the human aspect of socializing, we get social media. People have always been they've always been moving around. We get cars and they speed up this process, but it has always been a thing. Everything that we make is an extension of who we are to try and make our lives easier, right? So I was looking at the gadgets that we have, whether it's PCs or phones. If you have owned your device maybe for more than, let's say, a month, your YouTube, um, and basically all your social media, everything is like sort of the algorithm has learned to tap into what you like, who you follow, and it makes suggestions based on because you have followed so and so. So we think you might also like because those people they sort of run in the same spaces. So it does that. But when a phone is new, it's on what we call default settings. When a phone is in the box, they are all the same. If it's Samsung, what? They are all the same. They have the same stuff. So it's the thing I was thinking now. Every phone comes with default settings according to their parent company, whatever made them. When they come from the box, they are all the same. But when we stay with it for some time, it begins, the apps you download are not the ones I download. Um, your usage is not really the same. We go to our social media and all these things, they become customized for you. So now, if you think about your life, I think as human beings, we also have default settings, except that I don't think ours are settings which we came with like from birth. I mean, there are those, but what I want to talk about is more your parents, the parents you grow up with, the people you grew up, your environment where you grew up with, you sort of picked up certain things from there. And then your religion adds another factor. It adds certain things to you. So that's why if you say someone says he's a Vambo, all Vambos have certain things in common. So your tribe has attached sort of certain things to you, which you come with by default as a Vambo. Vambos have certain things in common that makes them such. Christians have certain things that make them who they are. If you're a Muslim, you have another kind of setting. If you grow up in the north and someone else who has grown up in Windhoek, different environments, they have fed different things into you. So we all have those default settings. We have certain default behavior that has been so hammered in us by the way we were brought up. And then what happens is around the age of 18, especially when a lot of people come to varsity and stuff, 17, 18, you start to want to be your own person, to find your own group, your own network. You want to get away from what your parents and your community and your religion and whatever that age may be for you. But there comes that time where you maybe realize that, but I don't really maybe like certain things about you start reading books, you start doing all these different things. But the thing is, like those default settings, we cannot really, I don't think they ever truly go away, because if you take again, I'll take the analogy of a phone. You can have a phone, but you can reset to like factory settings, right? It goes back to exactly the way it was when it's new. So when a human being goes in extreme situations, something deep happens, because a lot of, in my experience, I know for a while I shunned Christianity. Some stuff happened to me and I went away from it. I was like, I'm not a Christian. I uploaded even some things on YouTube where I was like, no, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe. I don't know all these things. And then something extreme happened to me. And what was the first instinct? To run back to Christianity, because this is my default setting. It's sort of what I knew. It's what I grew up with. All the other things I was just trying. And then I hit like a ceiling. A certain situation happened to me, and I ran back immediately to the Bible and to Jesus and things, because that's what I was accustomed to. So I think a lot of us have this. We have certain things that are ingrained within us from before. Because, your environment where you grow up and your parents, who your parents are, your religion and your culture is so important. We have this so much part of us, but we get an education, we start making some money, and all of a sudden we feel like maybe we are above. You have those people who go around saying, I don't do culture, I don't do this, I don't, people who go around with such things. But those default settings are there. And I think the point I'm trying to make here is just you should be aware of what your default settings are, so that you are able, if you now really want to change them, because you can change them. It takes time, but you can really add layers on that to fill up for that. Because, like, naturally, by default, I'm a shy guy. But I have to admit that I was one of those guys, especially in primary. I wouldn't talk to girls, I wouldn't do all this stuff. But it's something I hated about myself. I had to read like a lot of books and watch a lot of videos online from different people, trying to, who sort of, people were talking about like how you can augment your personality, because I didn't really like that about myself. And it's still there, but I've learned how to cover it up. And I think that's where I started watching stand-up comedy more, started watching more comedy stuff, because um one of, I think, the people I used to watch in their books, I used to, because they say the humor is a great tool when you're trying to socialize. Because I always felt like I was socially awkward, I couldn't do certain things. So I sort of consumed a lot of comedic content. And these days, many people who know me usually know me for jokes and liking to make, because it has become a part of me that is what that I have used to cover up the fact that I was shy growing up and all these things. So I find myself in any tight spot, in any situations. Now I immediately run to humor. An uncomfortable situation, I try to make it funny to try and cover up so that. So I think it's something that's very important for us to all individually be aware of what your default settings are, because it's also difficult to try and address a problem to change it when you don't really understand and know what it is. Because you have people, someone saying they don't do culture, but you look at them and you really see that. But you're saying you don't do culture, but this, your culture is basically part of you. I don't do religion, but every corner of you, your life is sort of religious. Maybe you don't practice by your standards, but it is right there, because this is something that has been pushed into you for basically all your life. When you are not really, you didn't have that much of a will or a say in what you do or don't do. Your parents brought you up a certain way. The way they brought you up, that becomes sort of hardwired into you. Your religion told you certain things. Those things sort of become hardwired into you. They become so part ingrained in you. Your community, the things that happened around there, it shaped you in a certain way. So Now, when you get to a point where you are saying, no, actually, um, I grew up in a very, in a town maybe where, people liked maybe, I don't know, there's a habit of drinking, and I actually don't want this. But drinking was so normal for you. So it takes work for you to sort of build on these default settings and change the settings to suit you, just like you would with your phone. You take it, you adjust certain things, the tones, the brightness, what, all these, you download all these apps. And I think that's the importance of, in my case, I read a lot of books, I watch a lot of podcasts, I listen to a lot of sermons and a lot of talks. I read a lot of uh, stuff, and I consume a lot of content on personal development because I want to be, I want, I think I sort of want to create myself the way I want to be. And for that to happen, I have to be aware of where I am and what it is that makes me who I am now. And I have to be aware of those default settings. I have to be very much and study my culture. Why do Vambos do this? Why do they practice? Why? Because in my studies of that, I've noticed sort of like Vambos are very hypocritical. And I found that a lot in myself. This thing of you don't want anyone to see fault in you, you laugh with everybody, but deep down, you don't really like the people, and they will never know. Like, I think if you're a Vambo, you grew up, you would know this. There'll be some people that hate each other, but come family gatherings and things, it's like they're really okay. They can sit down, have a conversation, laugh, what, and then the person leaves and they're like, can't show it and so I realized that it's a part of my culture that I just took because it's something that made me. And then there's an aspect to Christianity where a lot of Christians are very hypocritical, very judgmental. And I had to, because I'm coming from that, it is what is, I've consumed a lot of that over the years. So I had to learn to find the right way to deal with certain things so that I correct that which, because there are certain parts that we just, because as a child, you take in all this stuff. Parents teach you certain things. Like, my parents are like, especially my dad, I think he's in his mid mid 80s. So these are people who were very much affected by the apartheid system that was here. And that white superiority is still very much, or it's in his head. He will tell you a black man can't own a business by himself. This can't be, a man, he has to have white people around him for him to make it. This, white people. I grew up on this. And it took education, formal and informal, but a lot more informal. I had to self-educate and see what the root, to try first of all understand the place where he's speaking from, because he's speaking from his experience. And in his time, black people were not allowed to do this. They were not allowed to do. So rightfully so, he has the mindset that he has. And then I come along a while later, and I have now to face this issue and understand where he's coming from. I mean, he's my dad, but I I don't agree with him in that area, and I have to fix my mindset because I grew up with him on that. No, you'll be doing anything and anything goes on. Those kind of situations. And these were traumatized people at a time because of the time they lived in, and usually they would pass on some of this trauma to us. And so we have to learn, so it became a part of who we are as a generation of people brought up by parents who were through that. But also, you reach a certain age and you detach yourself from that. And that takes a lot of self education, self learning, observing, understanding what it is that you are and where it is you want to go and building on that. But the beginning is with these default settings. Identify what they are, understand the environment, your community, where you were brought up in, Study that and see the patterns that are going around there and try to compare them to your character, your personality, your behavior, and see what you have picked up from there. Go to your culture, your tribe, your tradition, all these things that you, and go to your religion, your beliefs. Look at what it is that it has put in you, and you keep the good, and what the parts that are not working, you just change them. Simple as it's like buying a new device. You don't change all the settings. You look at all the settings you want to change, and you change it to what you want it to be. But first, you must be aware of what those default settings are. And I've done, I mean, it's a work in progress. Not all the way over to say I have overcome, blah, 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 but I have learned to identify parts of my community, part of my religion, parts of the belief systems which I had, which were not serving me. My tribe, the Vambos, have certain things in common. I had to identify what is good about the Vambo culture, what works for me, what doesn't work, and what I have to identify what doesn't work, and I have to put it aside. In my religion, the Christian religion, because as much as I would say, like the time I was saying that no, I'm not a Christian, though I went around for a while saying that. After a while, I had to go back and to try, and I said, this thing is not all bad, but there are certain aspects of it which I don't agree with, which I have to set aside, which are not working for me. And I have to pick what works for me and keep it. And I have to try and find more sources. This is why I read a lot and try to understand different people's cultures and things as well, and just see what can I use from there and what works for me best, so that I apply that. Because the best is to, for me, my goal is to be the best person that I can be. And whatever gets me to that, whether I hear things from a Muslim or from a Hindu or from but what they're saying is sound, and I take it and apply it and it works. Because I don't think wisdom does not have like a religious or like a tradition attached to it. Wisdom is wisdom, whether it's from a Buddhist, from a Hindu, from a Muslim, it's all the same. People who have done the work to get the knowledge they have. I mean, it's, you apply it and it works. Doesn't matter if the person is from which part of, you don't share their, you may not agree like with someone on everything else, but you identify something that they say which is true and you run with it. So it's very important for us to be very aware of the things that have made us who we are, those default settings again that I spoke of from the beginning. Those things, your culture, your religion, your community, because you have picked up a lot from that has made you who you are until this point. And then there's a time now where you want to become your own person. You realize maybe you no longer share the views that a lot of the people you grow up maybe share. You no longer maybe agree with everything that your religion preaches. Because the mistake sometimes we make is to demonize what has made us who we are, which now becomes like sort of a conflict, because this thing is part of you, but you are claiming, I don't do it, but it is in you already. So, because there are a lot of people who just say, I'm done with the religion, I'm done with the culture, I'm done with all these things. But now there are valuable aspects to the culture that has made you who you are until this point. The point where now you realize. So it's now a point to reflect and now check, what is it in this religion that serves me best? What is it about my culture and my upbringing that I like and serves me best? And what don't I agree with? What is toxic? So that you separate that and you keep the good. But you cannot do that unless you are willing to do the work, to study your upbringing, the community you grow up in, see the patterns that are there and see what is in you. Look at your religion, look at your tribe, because people don't call people that's just Vambos, Damaras, what for nothing. We are called that because you have a lot of things in common. that make you who you are. So identify those default settings and then change the ones that you don't like so that you become and just create yourself exactly the way you want to be. But it begins with the awareness of those default settings.